This is part two here of Not All Is Well in Zion. Um, I can't stand Windows 10's video editor, and I haven't even tried to use Windows 11's video editor enough. I wanted to do this all in one shot, but it looks like I'm going to have to merge these two videos together if I can. Anyways, yeah, I was talking about the FLDS and finding the lost 116 pages, or the sealed portion of the Book of Mormon, and how people just get this into their heads that they're going to be the ones to find it, and it never happens. So, moving on. He added, it is in a culture where there is a prophet in the present day and in which man and God communicate on a deeply personal level that these experiences take place. Number 6, Michael Wilner. New research reveals secrets about psychology of polygamy, sex, and their leaders. ABC News. Okay. Dr. Wellner insists that such beliefs and behavior are not always psychotic, that traits similar to psychopathy can be a product of strong beliefs and cultural context. Moreover, the power of religious ordination enables someone who is psychopathic to exploit the devout around them. How expedient a position to be a prophet with unquestionable superiority and providence. For the wrong person is absolute power that corrupts absolutely. Individuals within the mainstream LDS Church can also take the doctrine to extremes. One example is Glenn Taylor Heltzer, who in 2000 twisted scripture to convince his brother Justin Heltzer and friend Don Godman that bloodshed was necessary if he was to reach the highest echelons of the Mormon Church and to usher in the second coming. That is Malika Fraley, Grim Crime Scene Re-Explored in Depth in False Prophet, San Jose Mercury News, March 16, 2008. Okay. He then proceeded to murder 5 people. Other notorious Latter-day Prophets responsible for religious killings include Bruce Longo, Jeffrey Lundgren, the Lafferty brothers, and Erval LeBaron. Christine Johnson was not a self-appointed prophet, but thought God told her to drown her 2 children. All of these events have occurred within my lifetime. While anyone can go off the deep end, instances when insanity is inspired by LDS teachings cannot be easily dismissed. The scriptures contain too many stories about underdog prophets who triumph in the end. Leaders of spin-off groups can be very convinced and convincing in the context of prophets like Noah, Paul, Lehi, Jonah, Abinadi, or Joseph Smith himself. On June 2nd, 2002, 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart was abducted from her home by Brian David Emmanuel Mitchell. She was held captive and repeatedly raped for 9 months. The Elizabeth Smart case is particularly interesting for 2 reasons. 1, Mitchell and his wife, Wanda Barzee, sincerely believed they followed the teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith. In the LDS context of personal revelation and spiritual gifts, Mitchell thought he was a prophet. Following the example set by the former prophets, he obeyed God's revelation, went against society's laws, and took an especially young second wife. BYU professor Daniel Peterson studied Mitchell's writings and called Mitchell's book an impressive production in many cases, and said Mitchell used scriptural language well and makes many references to both fundamentalist and mainstream beliefs of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Well, that's interesting. If Mitchell can use scriptural language well and be so familiar with it that he writes a pretty impressive book, can a farm boy from upstate New York do that at 23 years old? And no, he was not a kid, he was a man. I do not share his beliefs, but there is logic to them, says Peterson. The logic makes sense when you buy into the propositions. Arguably, Mitchell would have abused people regardless of his beliefs, but the context of Mormon culture gave him spiritual justification. Secondly, Elizabeth Smart's conditioning likely made her submissive and easily controlled by Mitchell. Mormonism puts people into a submissive and gullible state where they are more vulnerable to more extreme manipulators. When the story first broke, reporters openly suspected Smart's family, questioning whether a 14-year-old girl would willingly go with a strange man without putting up a fight or trying to run away. When I heard this, I became livid. Of course she would be willing to go with a strange man. I was also once a 14-year-old Mormon girl. I had been sheltered. I was naive. I had been taught to trust unquestioningly. I was particularly vulnerable to fear and had no defense against those who might wish to abuse me, nor the understanding of what such abuse might entail. I had been taught that God works in mysterious ways and might have easily bought a well-crafted story by an assailant well-versed in Scripture. Worst of all, I was never taught that I had the right to fight back. With myself in her shoes, I could imagine a number of scenarios through which Elizabeth Smart would have gone quietly. It turned out I was at least partly right. She originally went with Mitchell because he threatened her sister. She stayed all those months in part because of the prior conditioning intended to keep her subservient. In her own words, I remember in school one time I had a teacher who was talking about abstinence, and she said, imagine you're a stick of gum. When you engage in sex, that's like getting chewed. And if you do that lots of times, you're going to become an old piece of gum who is going to want you after that. For me, I thought, I'm that chewed up piece of gum after Mitchell rapes her. Nobody re-chews a piece of gum. You throw it away, and that's how easy it is to feel you no longer have worth. Your life is no longer has value. Why would it even be worth screaming out? Why would it even make a difference if you are rescued? Your life still has no value. This type of shaming object lesson is often taught in LDS Sunday school, and that's true. And I just want to make a mention of The Miracle of Forgiveness by Spencer W. Kimball, where he makes similar remarks that were interpreted in this manner, where if you have lost virtue, even if you were raped, even if it was not your fault, you are this chewed up piece of gum. Okay, and maybe he had better intentions than that when he said it, but that's what he did say. That's how it got interpreted by a lot of people. And this is the rhetoric that is often taught in Sunday school in that age range. And then I put in the margins here, I felt that way about all biblical failures growing up. I felt like I was the person who hides my talents and then doesn't have any talents. And I can't remember any of the other stories in my head, but I often compared myself to the failures in the Bible because I had doubt, because I had misgivings, because I had, or because I was bullied and I didn't want to be at the center of speaking up and having everybody turn against me. And I've had that experience multiple times throughout my life, where you say the wrong thing in church and now all of a sudden you have the entire membership in pitchforks up in arms. And that's a scary experience. And, with being bullied, for most of my life, I just wanted to stay out of the spotlight. Duck and cover, keep my head down, and shut up and not speak up. And for most of my life, that's what I did. And when I did speak up, it was a very scary thing to do. And now here I am making these videos on YouTube where I am under tremendous criticism from people in the LDS Church who want to maintain their faith. Smart now hopes to teach kids to fight back against assailants, something she said she was never taught to do. If you're given choices, if you're given skills, if you're given permission to fight back, you know that you are of value, and you know that you don't have to live your life that way. You don't have to do what other people tell you, that you have to value, and you always will have value. Nothing can change that. Then that's what we should be doing. So the next section is, why should we think, or why should we mourn or think our lot is hard? I want to stop right there and read that for part 2. It goes into self-esteem. It goes into square peg round hole syndrome, guilt and shame, depression, eating disorders, and suicide. And I want to leave that codependency and passive aggressive culture. There's a lot here. This is probably going to be a 3-parter. So I want to end off. We are at, why should we mourn or think our lot is hard? I hope this gave you some things to think about. I'm Shad Lang. Enjoy your church.